You ever notice how the angriest people in the room are always the ones with the least control? They're shouting, they're gesturing, they're red in the face, and everybody else is watching them lose themselves. Meanwhile, there's always someone standing quiet, still, at peace. And that person, that's the one everybody's actually listening to. That's the one with real power. Today, I want to talk to you about becoming that person, about mastering a force so profound, so transformative, that it will change not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. That force is calm. Let me tell you something I've learned through decades of observing human nature. Anger is the loudest lie we tell ourselves. We think it makes us strong. We think it proves we care. We think it shows people we're not to be trifled with. But the truth, the absolute truth, anger is evidence of lost control. It's a confession. It's you admitting that someone else, some circumstance, some moment has more power over your peace than your own spirit does. I'm talking to somebody right now who's been hurt, somebody who's been disrespected, somebody who's been overlooked, underestimated, betrayed. And you've got this anger burning inside you like a fire that won't go out. You wake up with it. You go to bed with it. And you think if you just explode one day, if you just let people know how furious you are, everything will change. But it won't. It never does. Here's what I want you to understand. When you give your peace away to anger, you're not punishing the other person. You're punishing yourself. You're the one who suffers. Your health suffers. Your relationships suffer. Your potential suffers. The person who made you angry, they often don't even know you're still twisted up about it. But you're carrying that weight every single day. There's a principle I've come to understand through living, through failures, through studying great men and women of faith and purpose. The person who masters calm has discovered something most people never find. They've discovered that their value isn't determined by whether people acknowledge it. Their peace isn't determined by whether circumstances are favorable. Their strength isn't measured by how loudly they can express their rage. No. Real strength, the kind that lasts, the kind that builds legacies, the kind that transforms generations. Real strength is quiet. It's the man who can be insulted and not respond in kind. It's the woman who can face injustice and still choose wisdom over retaliation. It's the human being who understands that getting angry at someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You want to know what separates people who accomplish great things from people who remain stuck? It's not intelligence. There are brilliant people going nowhere. It's not opportunity. Opportunity passes by people every single day, and they don't even recognize it. You know what it is? It's the ability to stay anchored, to stay centered, to stay calm when the storm is raging all around them. Think about it. When you're in a crisis, who do you call? You don't call the person who's most emotional. You call the person who's steady. You call the person who's thinking clearly. You call the person who's calm, because you know that person will help you find a way through. Calmness is competence. It's confidence. It's proof that you're operating from a place of genuine strength. I've been in this industry long enough to see how people respond when pressure increases. I've watched people lose everything because they couldn't control their reactions. I've watched them say things they could never take back, do things they could never undo, all because they couldn't master this one thing, the ability to stay calm. And I've also watched people who had less talent, less money, less opportunity, rise to heights most people only dream about. Why? Because they understood something fundamental about human nature. They understood that every person has triggers. Every person has someone or something designed to test them. And the question isn't whether you'll be tested. The question is, what will you do when the test comes? See, most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. But real discipline, the kind that matters, is about refusing to do something you desperately want to do. It's about sitting with your anger and choosing not to act on it. It's about feeling disrespected and choosing not to respond with disrespect. That's discipline. That's mastery. And here's something they don't tell you. When you make that choice, something shifts inside you. Every time you choose calm over anger, you're rewiring your own soul. You're telling yourself a new story. You're proving to yourself that you have power, real power, over your own mind and emotions. And once you experience that, once you taste what it feels like to be truly in control of yourself, you never want to go back to being a slave to your reactions. Let me be very clear about something. Mastering calm doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're a pushover. It doesn't mean you allow people to walk all over you. No. It means you're so secure in who you are and what you stand for that you don't need to prove it through aggression. It means you can address injustice with clarity instead of emotion. It means you can set boundaries with authority instead of anger. It means you can defend yourself, your family, your values without surrendering your peace in the process. Some of the most powerful people I've known didn't raise their voices often. When they did speak, people listened because they knew every word was chosen with intention. They knew that word came from a place of thought, not reaction. Calmness commands respect in a way that anger never can. Anger demands respect through fear. But calmness commands respect through authority. The authority of someone who knows themselves, who trusts themselves, who isn't threatened by anything outside themselves. Because that's what it comes down to. When you're afraid, you get angry. When you're insecure, you get angry. When you don't trust yourself, you get defensive and angry. But when you're rooted, when you know who you are, when you're connected to something bigger than your ego, then you can remain calm in any situation. Nothing can shake you because you're not standing on shaky ground anymore. I want you to think about your purpose for a moment. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's being a great parent. Maybe it's building something meaningful. Maybe it's serving others. Maybe it's leaving a legacy. Whatever it is, that purpose is bigger than any single frustration, any single conflict, any single moment of disrespect. So why are you letting small things steal your peace from your big purpose? That's the revelation I'm trying to give you. Every time you choose to stay calm, you're choosing your purpose over your pride. You're choosing your peace over your provocation. You're choosing your vision over your vendetta. And the more you make that choice, the easier it becomes. The more you stay calm, the more powerful you become. The more peaceful you are, the more people are drawn to you because everyone is exhausted by drama, conflict, and anger. People are hungry for peace. And when they meet someone who has it, who radiates it, who can maintain it even under pressure, they recognize that as something real, something rare, something worth following. So I'm telling you today, master this. Make it your discipline. Make it your practice. When someone disrespects you, stay calm. When circumstances don't go your way, stay calm. When you feel the heat rising inside you, when you feel that urge to explode, to react, to make someone else feel as bad as you feel, pause. Breathe. Remember your purpose. Remember that your peace is not for sale. Remember that getting angry is like giving away the keys to your house. And you never, ever want to do that again. Because on the other side of mastering your calm is a version of you that you haven't even met yet. A version of you that's unshakable. A version of you that's powerful beyond measure. A version of you that can walk through any fire and come out the other side intact. That's who you're capable of becoming. That's your destiny. But you have to choose it. Every single day you have to choose it. When you lose your calm and give in to anger, you're making a transaction that most people don't even realize is happening. You're handing over something invaluable, your peace, your serenity, your emotional sovereignty, to whoever triggered you. Think about that for a moment. You're literally giving away the keys to your own house, and you're doing it voluntarily. Every time you explode, every time you lose your composure, every time you let someone else's words or actions dictate your emotional state, you're saying to that person, you have power over me. You get to determine whether I'm at peace or in turmoil. This is one of the most subtle yet devastating traps human beings fall into. We believe that by getting angry, by showing our rage, we're demonstrating power over the other person. But the opposite is true. We're demonstrating that they have power over us. We're proving that our peace is conditional. We're proving that our well-being depends on external circumstances and other people's behavior. And once that's established, once that pattern is set, you've essentially handed someone else the remote control to your life. Consider a simple scenario. Someone says something disrespectful to you. Your first instinct is to respond in anger. But what you're actually doing is letting their words determine your state of mind. They said it maybe 5 seconds ago, but hours later, you're still replaying it in your mind. You're still angry about it. They've moved on with their day, probably forgot all about it, but you're still suffering. You're still carrying that weight. And the person who made you angry isn't suffering. You are. This is why mastering calm is about reclaiming ownership of your own peace. It's about understanding that your emotional state is not a democracy where every person you encounter gets a vote. Your peace is your responsibility. Your serenity is your domain. Your calm is your fortress. And you are the sole gatekeeper of that fortress. Nobody else gets access unless you allow them to have it. When you understand this principle deeply, you start to see anger differently. You see it not as an appropriate response, but as a betrayal of yourself. You're betraying your own well-being. You're betraying your own power. You're becoming a servant to other people's behavior instead of remaining the master of your own experience. Real strength comes from understanding that your peace is not negotiable. It's not something that changes based on what others do or say. It's something you protect, cultivate, and maintain with the same vigilance that a warrior guards a fortress. And when you operate from that place of ownership, when you refuse to hand over your peace to anyone, something extraordinary happens. People begin to respect you differently. They sense that you're not easily moved. They sense that you're operating from a place of genuine authority and control. There's a dangerous misconception that exists in our culture about what detachment means. Most people hear the word and think it means indifference. They think it means you stop caring. They think it means you become cold, distant, uninvested in life and the people around you. Nothing could be further from the truth. True detachment is not about not caring. It's about caring so much that you can think clearly about what you're caring about. It's about loving something so deeply that you can see it with perfect clarity instead of through the fog of emotional reactivity. Real detachment is discernment. It's the ability to see a situation for what it actually is, not for what your emotions want it to be in that moment. When someone disrespects you, your initial emotional response might be to feel wounded, insulted, angry. But if you practice detachment, if you step back and observe the situation with clarity, you might see something entirely different. You might see that the person's disrespect has nothing to do with your worth. It has to do with their own insecurity, their own pain, their own struggle. Suddenly, you're not reacting to the disrespect anymore. You're observing the disrespect with compassion, understanding, and wisdom. This is what detachment gives you: perspective. It allows you to remain fully engaged with life while not being consumed by it. You can be a dedicated parent without being destroyed when your child makes mistakes. You can be a committed professional without losing your identity if you don't get the promotion. You can be a loving partner without abandoning yourself if the relationship faces challenges. Detachment says, I care deeply about this, and I also maintain my own center. I'm invested in this outcome, and I also accept what I cannot control. When you practice detachment as discernment, you become like a skilled observer of your own life. You're in the middle of situations, fully participating, fully present, but you're also watching yourself. You're watching your thoughts. You're watching your emotions. You're watching your patterns. And this dual awareness, this ability to be both in the situation and above it at the same time, gives you incredible power. It allows you to respond instead of react. That's the difference between wisdom and impulse. A reactive person is enslaved to the moment. A responsive person has the space to choose their actions deliberately. Detachment creates that space. It's like you're stepping back far enough to see the whole picture, instead of just being consumed by one small part of it. You can see what's actually happening, what's really being communicated, what's truly at stake. And from that place of clarity, you can move through the world with authority and intention, instead of being tossed around by every wave of emotion that comes your way. This is spiritual maturity. This is wisdom. This is the foundation of true strength. In any conflict, in any confrontation, in any moment where tension rises and emotions flare, there is always a narrative being written. There's a story being told about who you are, what you stand for, what kind of person you are under pressure. And the person who remains calm is the one who controls that narrative. They're the one writing the story. Everyone else is just reading it. When you lose your cool, when you let anger take over, you surrender control of how you're being perceived. The moment you raise your voice, the moment your face turns red, the moment you say things you can't take back, you've lost the narrative. Now other people are defining you. They're saying, see, they're unstable. They can't be trusted. They're dangerous when provoked. You've handed them the pen. You've given them permission to write your story, and that story becomes the truth in everyone's mind. But when you stay calm, when you keep your composure, when you speak with clarity and control, you own the narrative completely. You're the one defining the situation. You're the one setting the tone. You're the one everyone's watching to understand what's really happening. People look to the calmest person in the room to determine how serious a situation actually is. If the calmest person isn't panicked, then maybe it's not worth panicking about. If the calmest person isn't angry, then maybe anger isn't the appropriate response. Think about leadership. Real leaders don't command respect through aggression or volatility. They command it through presence. They walk into a room and people quiet down. They speak and people listen. Why? Because there's something about their composure that signals authority. It signals that they've already processed the situation internally, that they have a plan, that they're not threatened or overwhelmed. People are drawn to that. People want to follow someone like that because they feel safe. They feel confident. They trust that this person can handle whatever comes. When you get angry, you're essentially admitting that you've lost control of the situation. You're admitting that the other person or the circumstances have gotten inside your head, have disrupted your peace, have shaken your foundation. But when you remain calm, you're sending an entirely different message. You're saying, I see what's happening here. I understand the stakes, and I'm not moving. That's power. That's authority. That's the kind of presence that makes people reconsider their approach to you. Consider how different situations unfold based on who stays calm. In a negotiation, the person who stays calm gets better terms. In a conflict, the person who stays calm makes better decisions. In a crisis, the person who stays calm is the one people turn to for guidance. Calmness doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone around you. It sets the temperature of the entire interaction. It determines whether this becomes an escalation or a resolution. It determines whether people feel hurt or attacked, whether they become defensive or receptive. This is why anger clouds judgment so badly. When you're angry, you can't think strategically. You can't see multiple perspectives. You can't anticipate consequences. You're operating on impulse, and impulse always loses to deliberation. The person who can think clearly, who can see the long game, who can anticipate several moves ahead, that person always comes out on top. And you can only think that clearly when you've maintained your calm. There's a fundamental difference between people who are anchored to something and people who are just drifting. The person who is drifting gets angry at everything because everything affects them equally. A harsh word stings. A small setback devastates them. A moment of disrespect consumes them. But the person who is anchored to a greater purpose, that person moves through the world with a completely different filter. They're not moved by small things because they're focused on big things. When your purpose is clear, when you know why you're here, when you understand the larger mission you're meant to accomplish, momentary provocations become what they truly are: distractions. Nothing more. They're noise in the background of something far more significant. Imagine a surgeon in the middle of a critical operation. Someone could walk into that operating room and insult them, disrespect them, challenge them. But the surgeon wouldn't get angry. Why? Because their purpose, saving a life, is so consuming, so demanding, so important that a personal slight is insignificant by comparison. This is the power of having a purpose bigger than your ego. When you're connected to something greater than yourself, your ego becomes smaller. When you're serving a mission, defending a vision, building something meaningful, fighting for something you believe in, the trivial becomes trivial. The petty becomes petty. You develop a natural immunity to being triggered because you're operating from a different plane of existence. Most people spend their lives reacting to circumstances. They wake up and respond to whatever the day throws at them. They get angry when things don't go their way. They get frustrated when people don't behave as expected. They're slaves to external events. But a person with purpose, that person wakes up with a direction. They have a North Star. They're pulling towards something instead of being pushed around by everything. And that creates a completely different internal landscape. When you know your purpose, you also know what's worth your energy and what isn't. You become incredibly selective about what you engage with. You don't waste your calm on trivial conflicts because you're saving your energy for what matters. You don't explode at minor slights because you're too busy building something significant. Your anger, instead of being something that controls you, becomes something you can actually choose to deploy intentionally if and when the situation truly demands it. Purpose also gives you perspective on other people. When you understand that you're here to accomplish something specific, you also understand that other people are on their own journeys. Their attempts to provoke you, their disrespect, their judgment, those are reflections of where they are, not where you are. You can observe their behavior with compassion instead of taking it personally. You can understand that they're acting from their own fears, their own limitations, their own struggles, and that understanding dissolves anger at its root. This is why great leaders, great artists, great visionaries are often unshakable. It's not because they don't feel anything. It's because they feel something so much larger that smaller things pale in comparison. Their purpose is like a gravitational force that keeps them centered no matter what's happening around them. Self-control is misunderstood in our culture. We live in a time that celebrates expression, that glorifies authenticity, that tells us to let it all out, to be raw, to be real. And there's truth in that message. But authentic doesn't mean uncontrolled. Real doesn't mean reactive. Being yourself doesn't mean being enslaved to your impulses. True authenticity is knowing yourself so deeply that you can choose how to express what you know. That's self-mastery. When you master your calm, when you develop the discipline to choose your response, instead of defaulting to your reaction, you're engaging in the highest form of self-mastery available to human beings. You're not suppressing yourself. You're not denying what you feel. You're acknowledging what you feel and then consciously choosing what you do with it. That's power. That's freedom. That's the ultimate expression of human capacity. Think about the difference between a child and an adult. A child feels angry and immediately hits. A child feels sad and immediately cries. A child feels frustrated and immediately throws a tantrum. That's not authenticity. That's immaturity. An adult feels the same emotions, but they've developed the capacity to feel them without being controlled by them. They can feel anger and still speak with wisdom. They can feel sadness and still take care of their responsibilities. They can feel frustration and still move forward constructively. That's what separates maturity from immaturity. That's what separates mastery from chaos. Every single time you choose calm over anger, you're not just managing that one moment. You're building something within yourself. You're creating neural pathways, establishing new patterns, proving to yourself that you have dominion over your own mind. The more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes. The more you choose calm, the more naturally calm flows from you. You're literally rewiring your consciousness. This is why mastery of calm is so powerful. It's not just about that one moment when you don't explode. It's about what that moment does to your entire being. It's about the person you're becoming with every choice you make. If you can master your mind in small moments, you can master it in large moments. If you can stay calm when someone insults you, you can stay calm in a crisis. If you can maintain your composure when provoked, you can maintain it under any pressure. Self-mastery creates a foundation that nothing can shake. When you know that you control your mind, when you've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can choose your response, when you've experienced the power that comes from that choice, you develop an unshakable confidence. You walk through life knowing that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to handle it with grace and wisdom. You're not at the mercy of circumstances anymore. You're not vulnerable to other people's behavior. You're standing on solid ground because you've built that ground within yourself. This is where real power lies. Not in having the biggest voice or the strongest fist. Real power lies in knowing yourself so completely, in having trained your mind so thoroughly, in having established such complete dominion over your own responses that you become unshakable. That's mastery. That's the ultimate achievement of any human life. So here's what I want you to walk out of here with today. You have a choice in front of you right now. You can continue down the path you've been on, where anger controls you, where your peace belongs to whoever triggers you, where you're at the mercy of circumstances and other people's behavior. Or you can choose something different. You can choose to become the person who stays calm. You can choose to reclaim ownership of your peace. You can choose to see situations with the clarity that comes from detachment. You can choose to control the narrative through your composure. You can choose to anchor yourself to a purpose bigger than any provocation. You can choose to master yourself. This isn't easy. Nobody ever said mastery was easy, but it's simple. Every single moment presents you with a choice: anger or calm, reaction or response, control or chaos. And every time you choose calm, you're choosing yourself. You're choosing your future. You're choosing the person you want to become. The world doesn't need more angry people. The world is drowning in anger. What the world needs, what your family needs, what your community needs, what this moment in history needs, is people who can stay centered. People who can see clearly. People who can move through conflict with wisdom instead of warfare. People who understand that their greatest power comes not from how loud they can be, but from how still they can remain. You have that capacity within you right now. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. You just have to choose it, and then choose it again, and then choose it again, until one day you realize that calmness isn't something you're choosing anymore. It's who you are. It's your nature. It's your power. It's your legacy. That's the journey. That's the transformation. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of mastering your calm. A version of yourself that's unshakable, unbreakable, immovable. A version of yourself that's finally free.